Welcome into Jets Nation Radio, sponsored by Betway. Make sure you like and subscribe to Jets Nation Radio so you never miss a podcast.
Welcome into Jets Nation Radio. I'm Angus Hout. As always, make sure to check out Betway if you're in Ontario. 19 plus, gotta go make some bets, maybe on the Blue Bombers to hopefully win this rematch between them and the Rough Riders. What a heartbreaking loss in overtime. Ray, I know you're not much of a CFL guy, but if there was one game you want to watch this season, it was the Labor Day Classic between the Bombers and the Saskatchewan Rough Riders.
Oh, is that the one where they lost by like 2 points in overtime?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I saw it on Twitter.
Yeah, nothing more heartbreaking for somebody that lives in Manitoba, really in Western Canada, to watch Saskatchewan win. It's like we all collectively hate each other, but we all collectively hate Saskatchewan at the same time. So God bless the CFL. So yeah, check out betway.com. Make your sports bets if you're out in Ontario. Ray, how was your long weekend?
Pretty good, pretty good. A lot of just time to myself and don't have school going on, so that's pretty nice. So a lot of people I saw are getting ready to go back to school, and that's not me for the first time. So kind of weird, was kind of nice at the same time.
Yeah, I forget that you're just a youngin' sometimes, that you've just finished up school and going back to work like the rest of us drones. Well, getting back to work like the rest of us drones, the Winnipeg Jets back on the ice today. They're wearing their heritage pants. Do you think we're going to start seeing that heritage jersey on a fairly regular basis?
Yeah, I think it has to be something that they have to consider. Just that jersey is just one of their best jerseys all time. And you see what Ottawa did. Like Ottawa had their jersey for the longest time, and then they went back to their jerseys that they had, like their heritage jersey, and look at the success they've had in getting young and a team that's up and coming. So I feel like if the Jets do it, I feel like there's only good things to come.
Now, do you think that if they were to announce the heritage jersey as the home jersey, that they would also announce a potential captain, or do you think we're going to be captainless once again?
I don't think they're going to name a captain for this year. I think I think this year is the year where it should have been the last year where they don't have any, they kind of have that communal leadership. But again, the Blake Wheeler ghost of him last year where he wasn't the captain, but he was the captain. I think this year is what Shoveldayoff and Bonus were trying to do and create a more community team and see who emerges as a leader on the team. And I think this year is going to be a good time for some young players to get some opportunity that they can be in that leadership core.
I like it. I like it a lot. I wrote about it at jetsnation.ca today, where the Jets don't have, like what you said, the Jets don't have a captain. I know I've been kind of conspiring that Adam Laurie is going to be the next Jets captain, which I think that will coincide with his next contract signing. But that's just a me thing. We'll see what happens here in the future. Jets ranking of importance. We've been at it for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You want to crush 15 to 11 here?
Yeah, for sure. So my number 15, this was you really like to dunk on this guy. You don't really like him, but I have Mason Appleton in there. So I feel like he's a really good third line winger, and I think a lot of people forget on what he can bring when he's healthy. Like I look at that season in the shortened season where he had like 25 points, like he was like half a point a game. And every season since he's had injury problems. But when he's in the lineup, he's still an effective third line forward, and he's being paid not exorbitantly amount of money. Like he's only being paid 2.1. And the ability that, like, we saw him on the top line and the second line last year at some points, albeit he wasn't great in that role, but he still was able to go into that role and to be able to be a speedy penalty killer. I think that his importance on this team is a lot more than people realize that sometimes.
Fair enough. Maybe it's just I haven't seen him healthy enough to give him any real credit. And like he had such a rough time last season on in the top six. There's just a skill level that a guy doesn't have. But you're absolutely right. Dude's phenomenal on the PK, and sometimes you just forget about the PK. My number 15, Alex Iafallo. I don't know much about this guy. Everyone seems to like him. He's going to be a middle sixer. Penalty killer, face-off winner. Like, I don't know. Or he is a centerman, right?
He can play any of the forward positions. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about the guy, but I feel confident about him that he's going to have a huge impact with the Jets moving forward.
Yeah. So my number 14, I think you're going to get a little upset with me because he's your boy, but I have Dylan Sandberg in there. I Sandberg is a really great defenseman. I'm not saying that I don't want him higher, but I think we're kind of getting a little ahead of ourselves here where he was just a rookie last year and we're already touting him as an all-star defenseman, a great defenseman. I want to see more from him. Like I want to see a season where he builds upon this year. I don't want to put him in the rankings where I want him to be based on the season, but where he is right now. So obviously he's 14 for me right now. I want him to be higher, but I just need to see a full season from him and to see what he actually brings and maybe see what he can bring in an elevated role.
As much as I agree with you, the dude's going to be a top 4 defenseman. I don't think it's going to happen before the halfway mark of the season. I think he's going to take a little bit of time, but yeah, Dylan Sandberg, my guy, number 14. I don't hate it. I don't love it either.
Yeah, I will say that if we do this list next year, I would say that he's probably the one that if we look back at our list, this might be one that I regret putting too low.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least you didn't miss Axel Johnson-Fialbi like I did. So you're doing better than some of us here. My number 14, Morgan Barron. Really just that third line is kind of where I've got right in the middle here for our countdown. You like what you see out of him. Probably 30 points is probably going to be the guy's ceiling. He's going to bring a big body to the team, fetching pucks, doing everything right. So yeah, I got nothing against Morgan Barron. He's just my number 14 guy.
Yeah. And for me, for my number 13 guy, again, this is another defenseman. So I have Brendan Dillon in this spot. And he's really similar to me with Sandberg. I feel like Sandberg is what Dillon could be, but Dillon is what he is right now. He's a physical presence. He's basically, I feel like almost like an Adam Lowry on defense in a way where he's a guy that's going to stick up for your team. He's going to lay big hits. He's going to lay it all on the line. He's going to block shots. And that's something that is invaluable. Like those types of plays, you need to have physicality in today's NHL as much as it's getting faster and more skillful. Brendan Dillon is one of those guys that every NHL team, every playoff team would love to have on their team. So that value is just too high to put him any lower on my list.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Brendan, yeah, it's good. And Adam Lowry falls to number 13 on my list. Again, a guy that I really want to see as a captain, but his on ice performance, again, third liner, he's going to be the healthy center line, third line center for this team. Even if Mark Scheifele gets traded, I don't see him being elevated to the top 6 unless things get really dire for this team. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In my number 12, I have another player that was a rookie this year. I have Cole Perfetti. Again, this is a player that I wish I could have higher, but based on the injuries last season, I couldn't put him any higher. If he had a full healthy season, I would say he's probably in my 9 to 11 range. So a couple bumps up, but we know what Cole Perfetti is. He's an emerging star in this league. Like he's someone that had 30 points in 50 games playing with Blake Wheeler. And I feel like if he has the role and the ice time, we could see Perfetti really boom into a point per game player who's a really smart player and a really good passer. So not that I want to compare him to a player, but I feel like Cole Perfetti could be almost like a Nick Backstrom. I wouldn't say he has that ceiling as Nick Backstrom does, because obviously Backstrom had an Ovechkin to pass to, but that type of player where they're so smart and can pass it to really anyone and make their teammates better is what Perfetti could realistically and hopefully be.
Do you ever have those visions of Owen Power playing on the Jets and connecting with Cole Perfetti again?
I wish. But...
Oh man. Like if there's just one silly thing I could just do to this team, it would be, I would trade Mark Scheifele for Owen Power, just straight up. And I might seem like a bit of a lunatic. Buffalo might seem like a bit of a lunatic on that one, but darn it, I just want to see that connection again. And I'm also like, See, I think that Perfetti's gotten smarter with how he plays. I think he's going to avoid his injuries. Like, that's why I have him all the way up in my list where I do. So I'm going to shame you just a little bit there, Ray. Number 12, the first top 6 player in my list, Nino Niederreiter. I like him. I don't know how well he's going to fit in with this team if Scheifele is traded away. Like, he's a good veteran presence on this team. You liked what you saw from him, but there's sometimes where you can see him being kind of lazy. And that's kind of ultimately why I think he's number 12 on my list. I like him. I want him to do well. I just don't know if he's got the knack to be in a top 10 position on this team.
Okay, that sounds fair, but
well, debate me on this. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, but then I'm going to be taken away from what I have to say on Nino Niederreiter in a little bit here. So for my number 11, and the last one for me today, is Neil Pionk. I know you had him rated pretty low because of the chaos element that he brings, but I feel like Neil Pionk is one of those defensemen that really does everything. Like, not a lot of defensemen on this team can provide everything, like in terms of offense, in terms of defense, in terms of blocking shots, in terms of power play, in terms of PK. And I'm pretty sure, if I may be wrong, but I feel like Neil Pionk is one of the only defensemen on the Jets that has power play time, penalty kill time, and top 4 ice time.
He is the only one to do that. So you're right about that.
And that is extremely valuable. And I don't think a lot of people realize that he is on the power play, he's on the penalty kill, he's in top 4. Like those minutes are important minutes. Like, he's being relied upon to get offense, but also be responsible in blocking shots and preventing goals at the same time. So when Pionk is on his game and isn't a chaos element, I feel like Pionk is arguably almost around what Dylan DeMello could be. But again, like, he could be better than DeMello if he's consistent enough. We saw that in his first season that he was here and was on that top power play. But again, we need to see that Pionk where he's consistent and getting 30 to 40 points and not being a chaos in our own end.
Yeah, I really agree with you on the fact that Pionk could be better than DeMello. I fully agree with that. But yeah, when we get back to the chaos of Neil Pionk, or just an inability to stay at 100%, like, it seems like he's always at like a 68% on being healthy, where it's just like, you're doing just good enough to get by in your top 4 role, PK role, power play role. It's just, I think the dude works himself too hard and is almost too afraid to take a day off.
Yeah.
So
I'm pretty sure he was the leading scorer for the Jets in the playoffs this year as well, too. So
yeah, we don't talk about the first round. Yeah,
but we can see what he could bring.
Yeah, he just needs to bring it on a regular basis. So, and my number 11, Brennan Dillon, Mr. Muscles. John Scott says that guy has a bunch of fake muscle. Like, he has got real muscles, but he's that fake tough guy. So he looks like he's real strong, but he won't throw any big punches at you. Allegedly, according to John Scott. Sorry, I'm talking about him a lot. Go check out our podcast, my podcast with him that I released today, and go listen to Dropping the Gloves. But yeah, Brennan Dillon, I like what he does. To be perfectly honest with you, I probably should have had him and Pionk switched in my rankings of importance, but yeah, he does a good job. He's a top 4 defender. He's probably going to be a bottom pairing defenseman this year. I think that Dylan Samberg is going to take that next step forward and be a top 4 defender. If he doesn't, big whoop. He's still a sophomore player, but I could legitimately see Brennan Dillon taking that step down almost, and playing competent minutes with Nate Schmidt on the third pair. But yeah, you like the big body out of that guy. I like him. Like, everything that you said about him is basically what I was going to say about the guy. So, sorry, apparently my computer locked and didn't want to tell me what my next question is, you silly goose. Oh, so a lot of folks have been talking about Connor Hellebuck, Mark Scheifele. They're going to get traded here. If you were to only lose one of those two guys, who would you rather lose? Or I actually, you know what? We know the answer to that. It's going to be Connor Hellebuck. So
I would rather
unless
lose Shifley.
really, or
Yeah,
not lose. So yeah, you'd rather
let's
lose
see.
Shifley than Hellebuck is kind of what I meant.
Yeah.
But you're still going to get a pretty good picking out of him. But what happens if you lose Mark Scheifele, especially with power play one and center line or first line?
Yeah. I think that's the reason why the Jets haven't traded him, because if you look at the center core without Shifley in there, like you're relying heavily on Velarde, Perfetti, and Iafallo. Like those players are good players, but again, like I don't think the Jets have a quality one center that could take over the production that he brings. Like, I think we forget that trading away Shifley, sure, it could help us get a great return and build up assets to be better in the future. But again, like, who's going to take that role? Like, we need someone almost coming back or ready for that role. So you're not having that big of a gap in production. Like, we saw Mason Appleton and Sam Gagne on that first line at some points. And I don't want to have a centerman that's trying to keep up with Ehlers and Connor at points. So again, I really hope that they can trade Shifley and keep that center core good. But again, it's an interesting dilemma where they have that 1C, and if they trade him away, is that giving up on the playoff hopes altogether?
Yeah, and I mean, after this season, if you end up losing Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele, and let's just say Laurent Brossoit, he doesn't re-sign with the team either. What do you do? Does it almost make sense that this team goes into a legitimate rebuild and accepts that we have one awful year?
Yeah, again, like the Jets really don't want to rebuild. I understand it. They want to make sure that their team is young and competitive, but they also don't want to be at the bottom, kind of looking like Montreal, where Montreal's been at the bottom. They look like they're emerging, and then you kind of get into that rhythm where you're trying to get better, but then you have injuries, you have players not developed properly, and then you're kind of in. You don't know how long a rebuild will last. Like you could say, oh, we'll be in a rebuild for 3 years, and then we'll emerge and be really good. That's considering everything going right. What happens if everything goes wrong? What happens if no one wants to come to your team anymore and you're constantly rotating players because no one wants to play there? Again, there would be ample opportunity for players like that, but I think the team wants to stay young, stay competitive, and then keep grinding away at making their plays better and drafting players that want to be there.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously important to draft guys that want to be there, but getting these guys in the 10 to 25 spot year after year, can you win off of a team of just second and third liners? Like eventually, Winnipeg's going to need to find that superstar, a top 5 pick, and unfortunately, the way to do that is either you get lucky with a trade and you don't have any sort of trade clauses that go into a first round draft pick, or you suck for a year,
Yeah,
and
and
then you
I
hope
want
that
to
you
ask
draft
you though.
well.
I want to ask you how many players were drafted by the Jets in the top 5 that have been on that 2018 team
That
or
were
for that
on
playoff run that were
uh
stuck.
oh, line A, Wheeler,
That's it.
2.
Yeah. And then you look at the team now, there's literally, I don't think there's a single player that was drafted with Wheeler and Lining now gone. Is there a single player that is drafted above Mark Scheifele's number 7?
No, but we're if you talk to people outside of this market, the issue that comes up is this team going to be mid? Are they going to be just another average team where it's like, oh, we might make the playoffs. Oh, we didn't make the playoffs. Cool. We get another, 10 to 15 pick. Cool. And it's just this, the Jets have been on this cusp for, the last, since 2019, they're a cusp team.
Yeah.
So, and like you look at the Edmontons, the Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh back in the day, Washington back in the day, they went through the muck and the mire where it sucked. You didn't want to be a fan of the Pittsburgh Penguins pre Sidney Crosby. And even now you're getting to that point where it's like, why are we still holding on to Sidney Crosby? Eventually you have to suck again in order to reach that greatness. You have to win a Stanley Cup. It's not about, well, we made the playoffs and so the owner got an extra $3 million. Sweet.
Yeah. One team that I think about though that is kind of in that same conversation of being mid like the Jets is the New York Islanders. And if you look at their drafting history, of course they did have one whiff in Michael Dal Cole in 2014. But again, you look at their drafting, like, if you can find players like look at the Jets draft, they drafted Kyle Connor at pick 18. If we can continue to draft good players and steal players, like look at Brad Lambert, you look at Kobe Barlow, these are players obviously they're in that 14 to 18 range, but some are saying that they could be top 10 picks. So I feel like you have to have trust in these young players. And again, like it's going to be hard to get over being a mid team, but if you believe it's either going to be making the playoffs or not making the playoffs. So eventually, after a certain amount of time of making the playoffs or not making the playoffs, something's going to come to a conclusion on if they're a contender or if they're a pretender. And I hope to see that we're a contender, but if not, if we're not making the playoffs, then I feel like a rebuild may be in the works.
But what happens if the Jets are, we get to trade deadline day and it's like, well, the Jets are, 2 points out of the playoffs. So they decide to trade a first round pick and to get someone, to be that next piece to get them into the playoffs. Sweet. We got 5 games of playoff hockey, gave up a first rounder for it. That's it. And, Connor Hellebuck, Mark Scheifele both walk away for nothing. So now you're down a first round draft pick. You're down a first line centerman and your elite starter goaltender.
Mm-hmm.
So it just, the Jets got to stop playing this, this easy game of, well, we made the playoffs or just barely made the playoffs. Either you're in it for a cup or don't bother. And that's kind of where I'm at these days, where I've been persuaded to be at these days. All right. You got any bold predictions about these Winnipeg Jets moving forward for this season?
I do have one. I do not want to believe this, but I do have a bold prediction that there's going to be no defenseman on the Winnipeg Jets with over 50 points.
Ooh.
So I feel like Morrissey might have a little bit of a regression there.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like he had an amazing year, like not to show any doubt on him, but it's again like he's 28 years old and he just had this amazing year. I feel like and with the changes made to the team and the subtractions of Dubois and Wheeler, like it might be difficult for him to get over 50 points. And it again, that's my bold prediction. I want to be wrong, but we'll see how it goes.
I like it. Hey man, sometimes bold predictions aren't pretty. So that's an interesting one. Cause I wasn't going to say it for this one, but Morrissey definitely regressing is something I was thinking was going to happen this year. So below 50 points, that's an interesting one, but we'll take it for what it is. I've got something on the similar side, but on the positive note, I think that we see our first 50 goal scorer in this city since the Jets have been back.
Is that going to be Ehlers or is that going to be Connor?
Casey. First of all, I don't think that Mark Scheifele is going to get traded. I think that he sticks around for the entirety of the season unless things go incredibly poorly early on. But I think just the way that line can click, and if all 3 of those men can stay healthy, you watch out. That I think that we're going to see a 50 goal scorer and a 40 goal scorer on that line. I know it sounds absurd, but like,
it doesn't sound wrong though.
It doesn't. No, because like we've seen what these guys can do. And like straight up, if Mark Scheifele can figure out the defensive side of the game, like this team is legit. They do have the potential to be a legit team. It's just whether can Mark Scheifele be that guy?
Yeah.
So either I'm going to be all in and be the world's biggest Scheifele fan, or I'm going to bully him until hopefully he's gone. So hopefully it's the first one, because I want to like Mark Scheifele. This is one of your questions. Do you have any games that you're most excited for this season?
I gotta say I don't know exactly when they play it, but like a game against Minnesota, like we saw it at the end of the year where the Jets had their playoff hopes on the line and how physical and like Ryan Reeves fight and there's there was just so much going on in that game, and it was such an important game. And I think there's going to be a little bit of bad blood just because Minnesota fans are going to cry that Stanley injured Kaprizov. So again, I feel like Minnesota, it's always a close game, or sometimes I think they blew us out like 6-1 the one time, but that we ignored that game. We only looked at the last
They blow
one,
us out
and
once a year where it's just like, God, what happened? Why is Minnesota the worst? But
yeah, so I would
yeah.
have to say the second Minnesota game. The first Minnesota game we're probably going to lose.
But the second game, that's where I think we play them twice before the American Thanksgiving there. So yeah, I'm excited for those because I was going to say the same thing where it's like, well, I could, anytime Edmonton comes into town, I'm excited for that. But the game that I'm really excited for this season is on October 30th when Blake Wheeler returns to Winnipeg. I mean, that's your former captain there. I'm sure it's going to be a great night. I'm sure he's probably going to have a great night against the Jets just to be like, well, you guys let me walk for nothing. So time to mess up your night. So I'm very excited to see Blake Wheeler back in Canada Life. It's going to be weird to see him in anything other than a Jets uniform. I know that he's played for other team for Boston, but that didn't really count.
Yeah, over 10 years as a Jet, so
Yeah. And, what was it, 5 years as our captain?
yeah, I don't know when he was the captain.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you when he became the captain, but it was after Andrew Ladd. That's all as much as I can tell you. Ray, that's all I got for this super short podcast. You got anything else for us besides where we can find you on the internet?
I don't think I do.
All right. Well, where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me at ray.how on Instagram. And if you have any questions or you want to chirp us, go right ahead. You can let us know.
We live for the chirps. So yeah, feel free to run your mouth against us. Yeah, like and subscribe, do all that cool stuff. If you happen to be up between 3 and 6 a.m. on Saturday morning, I'm going to be on the radio on 92.1 City. So tune in there. If you want to know, if you're listening to rock music, tune in. I'd appreciate that. You can find me on Instagram, Angus Hout. Make sure to follow Jets Nation on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And jetsnation.ca. We actually have weekly articles coming out that aren't just the podcast. So check all of that good stuff out. Have yourself a fantastic week. Go Jets, go. Peace and grace, friends.
Go Jets, go.
Bye.